The last thing I remembered from my first life was the smell of rain trapped in concrete. It had been after midnight, and the underground garage beneath Cross Meridian Tower was nearly empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed above rows of black cars, turning every polished hood into a cold mirror. My heel slipped against the wet floor as I ran, one hand clutching my phone, the other pressed over the flash drive hidden inside my coat lining. Julian had called 3 times, then the 6th. Then he had stopped calling. That silence frightened me more than his voice ever had. I reached my car and pulled at the handle. Locked. My fingers shook so hard I dropped the key fob. It struck the concrete with a tiny plastic crack that sounded impossibly loud. Behind me, an elevator chimed. I froze. Julian Cross stepped out alone, his dark overcoat perfectly buttoned, rain shining in his hair. He did not rush. He never rushed. Other men shouted when they were angry. Julian lowered his voice until everyone else leaned in. "Amelia," he said almost gently, "you're making this uglier than it needs to be." My mouth was dry. "You used my signature on the Halden transfers. You signed the authorizations. You put them between charity documents. You should have read what you signed." The words were calm, reasonable, and designed for an audience that was not there. That was how he had spoken to doctors when I said I could not sleep, to my family when I said I wanted my own bank account, to reporters when he described our marriage as private, stable, and deeply supportive. I backed away. I made copies. His eyes changed then. Not much. A tiny stillness entered them. Of what? Everything. He smiled, and I finally understood that he had never needed to love me. He had needed my name, my inheritance, and the soft, respectable image of a wife standing beside him while he moved debt through companies no one looked at closely. A car engine started somewhere in the darkness. Julian glanced past me. I turned too late. Headlights flooded the garage. Tires screamed. I remember the cold metal barrier against my spine, the flash drive cutting into my ribs, and Julian's face remaining perfectly composed as the car came toward me. When I opened my eyes again, my aunt was complaining about the flowers. "They're too white," Lorraine Hart said. "This is an engagement dinner, not a memorial." I stared at the crystal vase in the center of my grandmother's dining table. White roses, silver ribbon, beeswax candles. The air smelled of roasted lamb, furniture polish, and Vanessa's expensive jasmine perfume. My lungs seized. I was sitting in the Hart family dining room, wearing the pale blue dress I had thrown away 8 years before my death. Across the table, my cousin Vanessa watched me with bright, feverish attention. My mother touched my wrist. "Amelia, are you listening?" I looked down. My hands were smooth. No wedding ring, no faint scar across my thumb from the night Julian had smashed a glass beside my head and then told the housekeeper I had dropped it. At the head of the table sat my grandfather's attorney, Martin Bell, with the leather folder open in front of him. Beside him sat Julian Cross, 32 years old, handsome in a charcoal suit, one hand resting near his untouched wine. This was the dinner, the one where our families planned to announce that Julian and I would become engaged. My heart beat so violently I could feel it in my teeth. Then Vanessa laughed. It was a small sound, but I knew it. In my first life, she had laughed that way whenever she saw a photograph of me at a gala or stepped into the marble entry hall of the house on Wexler Avenue. "Before anyone makes an announcement," she said, "there's something Julian and I need to tell you." Her mother stopped adjusting the flowers. Julian turned his head toward Vanessa, not surprised, only interested. Vanessa rose. She wore red silk, a color my aunt had told her was inappropriate for the evening. Her fingers closed around Julian's shoulder with practiced intimacy. "We've been seeing each other," she said, "for 3 months. My mother gasped. My uncle swore under his breath. Someone's fork hit a plate. I looked at Vanessa. She looked back at me with triumph, so naked it should have embarrassed her. "You always thought the best things belonged to you," she said. "The trust. Grandmother's apartment, Julian. But not this time. Always. Not now, not tonight. Always." I knew then. She remembered too. Not everything. Not the garage, not the locked accounts, the cameras Julian hid in smoke detectors, the assistant who delivered my medication in unlabeled bottles, or the contracts layered beneath donation forms. But she remembered the photographs, the cars, the winter house in Vermont, Julian's name climbing higher in business magazines while mine appeared beneath his in smaller type. She believed I had died rich. She believed she had returned to steal my happy ending. Julian watched me carefully. He expected tears. My family expected a scene. Vanessa expected me to lunge across the table and beg for a man who had arranged my death. I placed my napkin beside my plate. "All right," I said. The room seemed to tilt around those two words. Vanessa's smile faltered. "All right. If Julian wants you, I won't stand in the way." My mother pinched my arm beneath the table. "Amelia!" Julian's gaze sharpened. "That's all you have to say?" I met his eyes. In my first life, I had spent years studying his moods because survival depended on noticing the smallest changes. The slight tightening at the corner of his mouth meant irritation. The stillness in his right hand meant he had already decided how to punish someone. His hand was very still. "I hope you're both happy," I said. Vanessa's face flushed. She had prepared for battle, not surrender. "You don't mean that." "I do." Julianne leaned back. "You are aware our families had reached an understanding." My family reached an understanding. I wasn't consulted. Grandmother's attorney cleared his throat. The arrangement concerned the voting rights attached to Amelia's 18% interest in Hartwell Storage. Mr. Cross's investment proposal assumed no, I said. Martin stopped. I had forgotten how quickly a room could turn hostile when a quiet woman interrupted a man holding paperwork. My grandfather had left me 18% of Hartwell Storage, a modest chain of temperature-controlled warehouses near the river. In my first life, my mother pressured me to sign voting authority to Julian as part of our engagement agreement. He later used those shares as collateral in one of his earliest shell companies. "I won't transfer my voting rights," I said, "and I won't pledge the shares." My Uncle Daniel stared at me. "You have no idea how to manage them." "Then I'll learn." Vanessa gave a brittle laugh. "You're doing this because you're jealous." "No, I'm doing it because they're mine." Julian's expression remained courteous, but the warmth had vanished from it. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." The memory of concrete and headlights slammed into me so hard my knees weakened. "No private discussion." His eyes held mine for a long second, then he smiled at the table. "Of course, tonight should be a celebration." That was the first moment I knew my second life would not be easy. I had escaped the engagement, but I had also made myself visible to him in a new way. Julian did not tolerate assets moving beyond his reach. Vanessa sat beside him and slipped her hand into his. I almost warned her then. Almost. Instead, I finished my water, tasting metal from where I had bitten the inside of my cheek, and began planning how to disappear from the future they had prepared for me. The next morning, I woke before sunrise in my childhood bedroom. Gray light pressed against the curtains, and for several minutes I listened for Julian's security system before remembering that I had not married him yet. I locked the door anyway. Then I began with ordinary things: my passport, birth certificate, social security card, trust agreement, and every record connected to my 18% of Hartwell Storage. I photographed them, opened accounts at a bank my family did not use, froze my credit, and changed every password. My mother found me packing. "You're being dramatic," she said. "I'm moving into grandmother's apartment. Julian will tire of Vanessa. You should remain composed and available." The word made my skin crawl. "I'm not something he can put back on a shelf." She warned that Hartwell depended on alliances and that I was risking the family over pride. In my first life, guilt would have folded me in half. This time, I closed the suitcase. If the company needs my marriage to survive, it has already failed. Grandmother's apartment occupied the top floor of a narrow brick building above a bakery in Westbridge. The floors creaked, buses rattled the windows, and the hot water took 4 minutes to arrive. For the first week, headlights crossing the ceiling sent me upright in bed, but no one opened my door without permission. I hired Miriam Cole, a lawyer my family disliked because she asked direct questions. Her office smelled of coffee and printer toner. She read the engagement agreement, tapped the clause giving cross-capital control over Hartwell's acquisitions, and said, "This is an asset transfer wearing a corsage." We notified the board that I would exercise my own voting rights and requested years of corporate records. My uncle called to accuse me of humiliating the family. "What are you trying to prove?" he demanded. "That I can read." I also returned to the career I had abandoned in my first life. Priya Shah at Northline Municipal Bank had offered me a junior risk position 2 weeks earlier. When I asked for another chance, she studied me across her desk. "The salary hasn't changed. The work is dull." "I hope so." She hired me on a 6-month contract. I reviewed vendor exposure and insurance gaps beneath fluorescent lights, ate soup from paper cups, and learned to breathe through panic when dark-suited men paused behind my chair. Every paycheck entered an account no one else controlled. Across town, Vanessa's victory became public. Julian proposed at the Cross Foundation's spring benefit beneath a ceiling covered in hand-painted clouds. Photographs showed Vanessa in silver satin, one hand over her mouth, a diamond throwing light across her face. He bought her a penthouse apartment for convenience, though the deed remained in a cross-capital subsidiary's name. He sent white orchids to my aunt every Friday. He arranged a profile in Bellwether Society calling Vanessa the modern heart of an old American family. My mother mailed me the magazine. A yellow note on the cover said, "This could have been you." I threw the note away and kept the magazine. The photographs mattered, so did dates, public statements, property ownership, and corporate affiliations. Julian had taught me that paper could become a weapon if arranged correctly. 3 months after the engagement, Vanessa visited my apartment in a cream coat and a handbag worth more than my annual rent. The bakery's cinnamon smell followed her upstairs. She looked at my mismatched furniture. There isn't even a doorman. There is a lock. She adjusted her sleeve, briefly revealing a red mark around her wrist. Then she said the family wanted my vote for a 10-year cross-distribution contract. "I'm voting no." "You're embarrassing Julian." The phrase came out automatically. I had once used it too. "Do you have your own bank account?" I asked. "Is the penthouse in your name? Does he have your passwords?" Her fingers tightened around the teacup. "Marriage requires transparency." "Only from you?" She rose so quickly tea spilled across the table. "You cannot stand that I'm happy." I wiped the tea with a cloth. "Do not sign anything that places cross-debt in your name. Do not accept an officer title for a company you do not manage. Keep copies of every document." Recognition flickered in her eyes, not of the danger, but of the wealthy future she remembered stealing from me. "You think you can scare me away and take my place," she said. "No. You had your chance." "I know." She left the tea untouched. The first crack in Julian's public image appeared that autumn, though almost no one recognized it. Cross Meridian announced the acquisition of Alder BioCold, a medical storage firm with contracts across 3 states. Business papers praised the deal as visionary. Julian appeared on television describing a new era of resilient health infrastructure. I remembered Alder. 2 years after our wedding in my first life, a compressor failure at one of its facilities destroyed millions of dollars in temperature-sensitive medication. Julian blamed a site manager, collected insurance, and used the losses to conceal money moved through a maintenance vendor that existed only on paper. The failure had not happened yet. I could not accuse him based on a life no one else remembered, but I could look. At Northline, Alder appeared in a vendor risk report tied to a municipal bond proposal. I disclosed my family connection and asked Priya to remove me from the final decision. Before stepping away, I documented 3 inconsistencies. Maintenance invoices from a company registered to a Cross Meridian employee's brother. Insurance coverage increased 4-fold 6 weeks before the scheduled system replacement. And inspection reports signed on dates when the inspector had been overseas. Priya read my memo in silence. "Where did you learn to look for this?" she asked. "From making expensive mistakes." Northline delayed participation and referred the discrepancies to outside counsel. The bond still moved forward through another bank, but the paper trail existed months earlier than it had in my first life. Julian noticed my questions. One rainy Sunday, he came to my apartment carrying a bottle of wine from the year we had met. I saw him through the peephole and stopped breathing. "Open the door, Amelia." "No." He said Hartwell depended on his financing and warned that my work at a small bank did not make me important. I switched on the recorder Miriam had placed near the entrance. "Is that a threat?" A pause followed, then his voice softened. "Vanessa is impulsive. You are not. This performance has gone far enough." In my first life, I would have heard longing. Now I heard inventory control. "You chose Vanessa." She made herself useful. The handle turned once. The chain held. Julian did not force the door. He rarely crossed a line witnesses could define. Instead, he left the wine on the floor and told me my mother believed living alone had made me unstable. The next morning, Miriam sent notice that all contact must go through counsel. I worked, attended Hartwell meetings, and made mistakes that were mine to correct. When a broker nearly drew me into a reckless construction fund, Priya helped me see the risk before I signed. "You're not cheating by asking for help," she said. I withdrew and used part of my dividends to repair aging refrigeration systems at Hartwell. During the next summer's heat wave, those warehouses stayed open and won new hospital contracts. I did not become rich overnight. I became difficult to erase. Vanessa's life, meanwhile, glittered more brightly in public. The wedding took place at the Cross Estate under heated glass in January. Snow covered the lawns. White roses climbed 20-foot columns. Guests drank champagne beside an ice sculpture shaped like two swans. I did not attend. My mother sent photographs anyway. Vanessa wore a gown with a cathedral train and a high lace collar. Julian's hand rested at the back of her neck in every picture. 3 weeks later, my aunt called to say Vanessa had resigned from her marketing firm. Julian believes wives of executives should avoid conflicts, Lorraine explained. He has given her a foundation role. Is it paid? A pause. That is a very small way to look at marriage. By March, Vanessa's social accounts had gone quiet. By April, she missed 2 Hartwell board meetings. In May, she appeared at a family dinner in long sleeves despite the heat and corrected herself twice before answering simple questions, glancing toward Julian each time. He was training her, not with constant rage, with rewards and removals. A necklace after she canceled lunch with friends. A weekend in Paris after she signed a non-disclosure agreement. Silence for 3 days when she questioned a transfer, flowers when she apologized. I knew the rhythm because my body still carried it. At the end of dinner, Vanessa cornered me beside the pantry. "You told Northline to investigate Julian." "I reported irregularities." "You're obsessed with us." "I'm trying to keep Hartwell out of his companies." Her perfume was sharper now, sprayed too heavily as though she were covering another smell. Her pupils looked pinched with exhaustion. "He says, you've always resented strong men. He says, whatever makes resistance sound like illness." She flinched. I lowered my voice. "Has he put you on any boards?" "That's none of your concern." "Has he made you an officer?" "He trusts me." "Vanessa!" "Stop saying my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you know something." For one reckless second, I wanted to tell her everything. The garage, the headlights, the years of smiling beside Julian while he hollowed out my life. But I saw what she would do with the truth. She would measure it against the future she remembered and decide I was lying because the magazines had called me fortunate, so I gave her the only warning she might use. "Search your name in the state corporate registry," I said. "Not on his phone, on a public computer. Print what you find." She stared at me. Then Julian called from the dining room. Vanessa walked away. 2 days after I warned Vanessa to search the corporate registry, photographs of me leaving a restaurant with Elias Grant reached every member of the family. Elias was a forensic accountant reviewing Hartwell's insurance vendors. The captions implied an affair, though I was unmarried and our dinner notes had already been filed with his firm. My mother called to accuse me of hurting Vanessa. Elias called to say someone had also filed an ethics complaint against him. "Don't apologize for someone else's conduct," he said when I tried. His calm was unfamiliar. He did not demand trust. He documented facts. That afternoon, Hartwell's largest lender withdrew its renewal offer, and Julian arrived at an emergency board meeting with a rescue proposal. Cross Meridian would refinance us in exchange for operational control and pledges of every shareholder's interest, mine included. Julian described my reports as obsession and my refusal as instability. Then Elias placed the lender letter on the table. "Page 4, he said. "The bank cites undisclosed exposure between Cross Meridian and the supposedly independent vendor Mr. Cross wants Hartwell to hire." Julian called it routine structure. Vanessa watched him place 2 fingers over her wrist and fell silent. The board delayed the vote. That night, she called me from an unknown number. That night, Vanessa called me from a number I did not recognize. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "What happens to the wife?" I sat up in bed. Rain tapped the window. The old radiator hissed. "What do you mean?" "In a company investigation, if documents have her signature." My throat closed. "Are you an officer of any cross entities?" She breathed unevenly. "How many?" I don't know. Vanessa, listen to me. Do not confront him alone. Do not delete anything. Photograph every document you can access and send copies somewhere he cannot reach. He says they're ceremonial positions. They're not. You knew. It was not a question. I looked at the dark ceiling and saw garage lights. I knew he used people. You knew what he would do to me. I warned you. You let me marry him. Anger rose so fast it made me dizzy. You announced your affair at my engagement dinner. You called me jealous every time I spoke. What exactly did you expect me to do? Drag you away while you told everyone I wanted him back? She started crying, but even then she tried to hide the sound. I thought I could manage him, she said. I thought that too. The words slipped out. Silence followed. What does that mean? She whispered. I closed my eyes. It means you need a lawyer. Not the Cross family lawyer. I'll send you a number. Will you come get me? I wanted to say yes. The old reflex was immediate. Rescue, soothe, surrender, absorb. Then I remembered waking on the floor beside my bed. I remembered the years Vanessa had spent admiring my cage and the months she had spent helping Julian tighten it around herself. Are you in immediate danger? No, he's at the club. Then pack identification, medication, cash, and one change of clothes. Leave through a public entrance. Go to a hotel under your own name or to your mother's house. Call Miriam from the lobby. I can't go to Mom. Julian paid off their mortgage. That does not mean he owns the house. You don't understand. I understand exactly. But I cannot become your hiding place. He already watches me. Her breathing changed, hurt hardening into accusation. So you're abandoning me. No, I'm giving you a lawyer and a safe exit plan. I'm not giving you my address, taking your documents into my home, or lying for you. She hung up. For 2 days, I heard nothing. On the third morning, Miriam called. Vanessa had reached her with a suitcase and 43 photographs of corporate records. Julian had made her an officer of 9 companies. 3 held Alder debt. 2 had bought equipment at inflated prices from a vendor tied to his chief operating officer. 1 company carrying Vanessa's initials showed a personal guarantee for $86 million. She swore she had never seen it. Miriam believed her, but belief was not evidence. The evidence came from Julian's own control system. He required every household device to back up to a private cross server. The tablet he gave Vanessa preserved earlier contract drafts, versions created before her electronic signature appeared. Miriam filed for legal access to Vanessa's personal property and demanded preservation of the server. Julian's lawyers claimed the tablet belonged to Cross Meridian and contained privileged material. In trying to keep it, they confirmed it existed. Elias connected the Alder records, Hartwell's proposed vendors, and the hidden guarantees. Priya preserved my original memo proving Julian had continued moving assets after notice of scrutiny. Then he attacked Vanessa in public. He leaked messages about jewelry and renovations, froze her cards, canceled her insurance, and threatened her mother's refinanced mortgage. My family urged her to settle so they would not lose the house. You supported the marriage, I told my mother. We supported stability. You supported whoever looked strongest. Vanessa rented a room near Miriam's office and sold the only jewelry that actually belonged to her. The rest, she discovered, was foundation property. Even Julian's gifts had never been hers. She came to my apartment once, in late November. The bakery downstairs was closed for renovations, and the stairwell smelled of plaster and coal dust. Vanessa stood outside my door in flat shoes and a raincoat too thin for the weather. Her hair was unwashed. Without makeup, she looked younger and more exhausted. I kept the chain on. I'm not here to stay, she said. What do you need? She held out an envelope. Inside was a copy of the Cross Meridian Winter Gala program from my first life, or rather, from the year that had not happened yet. The event was scheduled for December, and Vanessa's name appeared as honorary chair of the Cross Civic Renewal Fund. I found the draft in my email, she said. They created it before I left. I read the list of sponsors. Hartwell Storage was included without board approval, so was VHC Community Holdings. They're going to announce the City Redevelopment Fund, she continued. Julian said it would move pension money into infrastructure projects. I remembered the fund. In my first life, it had been praised for 2 years before collapsing beneath hidden guarantees. Julian survived by claiming that I, as foundation chair, had approved the transfers. This time, he had assigned Vanessa the role. He's still planning to launch it, I said. He wants the public money before the Alder losses become known. I looked at her through the narrow opening. Her mouth trembled. Was it like this for you? The question held no accusation now. I could have lied. I could have punished her with uncertainty. Instead, I said, worse by the end. She pressed her lips together. I used to look at your pictures, she said. I thought you had everything. I thought you looked tired because you were ungrateful. I was tired because he kept me awake before public events. He said exhaustion made me easier to direct. Vanessa closed her eyes. I stole your life. No, I said. You stole the picture of it. Rain clicked against the hall window. I'm sorry. The apology did not repair anything. It did not return the years of my first life or erase the pleasure she had taken in humiliating me in this one. But it was the first honest thing she had given me. I believe you're sorry, I said. That doesn't mean we go back to being family the way we were. I know. Give the program to Miriam. Tell her exactly when and how you received it. She nodded. Before leaving, she asked, Do you hate me? I thought about the garage, the dining room, the red dress, the fear in her voice when she asked what happened to the wife. Sometimes, I said, but I don't want him to destroy you. That was the truth, and it was enough. The Cross Civic Renewal Gala took place on December 17th at the Bellwether Museum. Julian refused to cancel. Gold light washed the stone arches while reporters, donors, and city officials filled the hall. I attended as a Hartwell shareholder. Elias came as forensic advisor to the insurers, and Miriam sat near the back beside two state investigators. When Julian entered in a black tuxedo, the room blurred. For a moment, I smelled wet concrete instead of perfume and champagne. Elias noticed but did not touch me. The west exit is behind us, he said. The side corridor is clear. You can leave whenever you choose. A map, a choice. My breathing steadied. Julian took the stage and spoke about trust, public duty, and protecting ordinary families. Then the screen displayed the fund's founding partners. Hartwell Storage appeared first. I stood. We have not authorized the use of our name. Heads turned, the cameras lifted. Julian smiled. A final board formality is pending. That is false. He called the disagreement personal and suggested my judgment had been affected by family conflict. The old method, concern shaped into a weapon. This time, documents reached the screens before doubt could settle. The event technician, served that afternoon with a preservation order, displayed the public filing for VHC Community Holdings. Vanessa's name appeared as guarantor of $86 million. Miriam Rose. State investigators froze transfers related to that entity at 6:14 this evening. Julian looked toward the exits. The investigators were already walking down the aisle. He called the investigation a private grievance. The lead investigator answered, Then the records should resolve it. They did. My Alder memo established early notice. Hartwell's minutes showed pressure to use related vendors. Vanessa's tablet history revealed signature pages inserted after drafts were created. Property records tied the maintenance company to Julian's officer. Bank disclosures showed guarantees hidden from investors. The gala materials proved he intended to solicit public money after regulators had begun asking questions. His chief operating officer was stopped at the service corridor. Reporters surged toward the stage. Julian came down toward me. For 1 second, I was back in the garage, trapped between headlights and concrete. He stopped an arm's length away. You think this makes you free? He asked quietly. My knees weakened. Then I saw the cameras, witnesses, and open doors. Elias stood nearby, not shielding me or claiming my space, simply present. I was free the moment I stopped signing what you put in front of me, I said, loudly enough for the microphones. For the first time, disbelief cracked Julian's composure. He had built his life on assigning everyone a price, weakness, or role. He could not understand someone choosing less luxury and more control. An investigator stepped between us. Julian left the museum under escort, walking as though the building still belonged to him. By morning, the photographs were everywhere. The investigation lasted 11 months. Cross Meridian's board suspended Julian, then removed him when lenders accelerated the company's debt. Alder entered supervised restructuring, and the city canceled the renewal fund before public money moved. Recovered server archives led to charges of wire fraud, falsified records, conspiracy, and obstruction. Julian blamed Vanessa, his officers, and the market. The version histories told a cleaner story. Vanessa was not cleared of everything. She had signed documents without reading them, repeated false statements at foundation meetings, and used restricted company cards after warnings. Under a cooperation agreement, she paid fines and received 3 years of monitored probation. Her reputation collapsed. She accepted the consequences. That mattered more than another apology. My aunt lost the house because Julian had refinanced it beyond its value. My mother came to my apartment at Christmas with a pie and said, "We all made mistakes." The sentence spread responsibility until no one had to carry it. "You tried to transfer my inheritance to a man you barely knew," I said. "When I refused, you told him I was unstable. I was frightened. So was I." Her tears no longer erased facts. I offered 1 phone call a month and clear rules. No discussing my work, money, home, or relationships. No sharing my address. No family pressure delivered through her. "I'm your mother," she said. "Yes, that is why you're getting a boundary instead of a goodbye." She disliked it. She followed it. Hartwell survived by selling 1-week warehouse and reducing dividends for a year. My uncle resigned after shareholders learned he had concealed Julian's guarantees. I joined the audit committee and pushed through independent oversight. At Northline, my contract became permanent. Then Priya promoted me to vendor risk manager. Elias stayed carefully. We met in public for months. He never arrived without asking and never treated fear as permission to take control. Once, after a black car followed me for 3 blocks, I canceled dinner. He left takeout with the bakery owner so I could decide whether to come downstairs. I did. Trust grew through quiet repetitions, a returned key, a kept promise, a question that did not punish the answer. 2 years after the gala, Julian was convicted on multiple counts and received a long federal sentence. Civil judgments and bankruptcy stripped away the assets he had used to control people. I looked at the courthouse photographs and felt no triumph, only distance. After her first year of probation, Vanessa moved to another state and found work with a small event company that knew her history. We exchanged birthday messages, nothing more. One day, she sent a photograph of a plain kitchen with yellow curtains. "First place in my own name," she wrote. "Keep the deed somewhere safe," I replied. I already made 3 copies. That was as close to forgiveness as we came. I stayed in grandmother's apartment, replacing the rattling windows and renovating the bathroom. The bakery reopened with green tile and stronger coffee. My shoes lined up by the door. My accounts required only my signature. My phone could be turned off without explanation. Some nights, rain still woke me. When it did, I walked through each room and touched what was real. Rough brick, cool stone, the brass lock I had chosen. Sometimes Elias slept beside me. Sometimes I was alone. Neither condition frightened me anymore. On the 3rd anniversary of the engagement dinner, I found the Old Society magazine in a drawer. There I stood beside Julian beneath crystal lights, diamonds at my throat, exhaustion hidden beneath makeup. Vanessa had mistaken that photograph for victory. So had my family. So had I. I carried it downstairs and dropped it into the recycling bin behind the bakery. Dawn spread pale gold across the wet rooftops. A delivery truck groaned at the corner and warm bread scented the cold air. The life I had lost had been made of marble, glass, and locked doors. The life I built smelled like coffee, rain, and bread rising in the dark, and every key in it belonged to me.